Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Daily Friend Show. I'm your host, Nicholas Lorimer, and I'm joining you today on yet another freezing day in Johannesburg, as I think much of the rest of the country is also kind of freezing. Today, I'm joined by Mr. Michael Morris. Michael, how are you?
Very well, thank you. I'm pleased to say that once again it's quite sunny, although nippy. And I think once the sun goes, the chill factor rises considerably. Otherwise, in fine fettle, thank you.
Excellent, excellent. And with a slight technical problem that is giving her a little bit of a delay in her responses, but hopefully won't be anything too much of a problem. We have Genevieve joining us for the second time on the show. Genevieve, very good to have you back, and good to be the host on the time that you are back.
Yes, thank you so much. I'm really excited to be back on the show, and hopefully my technical delay will sort itself out.
Indeed. Now, without any further ado, let's get into the news of today. And this story is one from that I think happened over the weekend, but is one of those kind of concerning ones. There is a lot of fear in the business community about the burning of trucks on the N3 and the N4 highways. Now, this is not new. We've covered stories similar to this in the recent past, but the most recent incidents of truck burning, I think, have really spooked business because of some of the details about them. So on what was exactly the 2-year anniversary of the 2021 July riots, at least 11 trucks were set ablaze by armed men on the N3 and N4 highways near Van Rieden's Pass on the N3, as well as the Waterval Boven on the N4 in Mpumalanga. And apparently the modus operandi of these things was that a bakkie showed up with a group of armed men who then proceeded to force the drivers out of the trucks and set them alight. In both cases, I believe the N4 is still closed, or at least was still closed earlier today. And this is very concerning because normally these things sort of have a slightly more theft-based angle around them. The trucks are often looted before they're burned. Sometimes there's an accompanying demand from some sort of supposedly business forum that says that, you know, the truck companies must stop employing foreigners or something like that. Mm-hmm. But in this instance, it's not really clear what exactly the demands have been, if any. Thankfully, it doesn't appear that anyone has died in those particular incidents. But still, as Gavin Kelly, the CEO of the Road Freight Association, said, no one has put their hands up. If the latest attacks were about employing foreign drivers, then why were they attacking companies that employed only locals and paid better than minimum wages? And they suspect that there is, in fact, a more nefarious reason. President Ramaphosa has also referred to this as being something like economic sabotage. So, of course, there's lots of negative consequences that come from this kind of truck burning stuff. You've got shaky business confidence. You've got increased prices because the transport costs are higher. You've got more stress on the rail network. At least you would if the rail network was working. And there's even now some talk, apparently, according to people in the road freight associations, that companies in the DRC and Zambia are looking to move their goods out through Mozambique rather than through South Africa. Now that is truly horrifying, Michael, when you consider that Mozambique is, shall we say, not exactly the world's greatest run country.
Yeah. I mean, doesn't that bring home to us, in a way, the grim truth of the existential condition of South Africa today, that, you know, countries like DRC, which, you know, we quite likely misjudge completely as being so much worse off than we are making these absolutely rational decisions about the risks and the, you know, this kind of security options of you know, sending goods through a country that's become very dangerous for them. And you know, it is worrying when you consider that we sort of in the dark here. We don't know, you know, why they're doing it, who's doing it. Is this some kind of probing gesture on the part of people who want to, try and trigger a repeat of the July 2021 unrest? The other point, which I think is just as worrying, is as Gavin Kelly, you quoted him earlier, but he says, is there more nefarious reasons, he puts it, for the attacks aimed at destroying the industry to make way for other players? And we've seen this with the the construction mafia and so on, people trying to elbow in by violent means and violent threats and so on, threats of violence, to just take over lucrative parts of the economy. So yeah, all around a very worrying thing. Very worrying development indeed.
Genevieve, what's your take on this? So I said this in the discussion we had before the show. There's something a little bit disturbing about this, in that it almost feels a little bit like some kind of how an insurgency would behave, right? And of course, we also saw, I think, on social media, one of Zuma's daughters, who's infamous for encouraging the July riots on social media last time, basically praising these actions and claiming, that was the closest I saw anyone claiming responsibility for them in some sort of veiled language. This really, it seems as though once again the country is being held hostage by, I guess, some kind of internal ANC nonsense. What do you take of this?
Well, firstly, I'm just grateful that nobody died. Often with these situations that occur in our country, people die, and it's more than just economic sabotage. It's fear, and it brings concern to the state of our country, and it can be very traumatizing. But I definitely echo the words of Michael. It is worrisome, and with nobody having put their hand up, as Kelly said, you cannot help but wonder. Sort of, people are going to have their conspiracy theories. People are going to have their own opinions, and it can incite further violence, and it's dangerous. It's dangerous, and already the N3 is a particularly dangerous stretch of road, but it is a lifeline for this country's economy, and it's a very dangerous situation. It very much like an insurgency, like a very dangerous position for this country to be in.
Michael, once again, we kind of see one of the complaints in the story from the associations that deal, that run the trucking business, was that there's no proactive policing. There's sort of sometimes reactive policing. And in a case where you don't even have goods being stolen, having more police patrols, having, escorts, which is a very dire place to be in, but it may be necessary to get us through this kind of situation, and having some sort of ability to actually scout out the crime ahead of time really seems like it's of paramount importance now. And it just strikes me that this is what, in the past couple of days, I think yesterday we talked about this, or the day before, this is just a sort of recurring feature, and that we really see the problems when you don't have something like crime intelligence, when you don't have a functional police force.
Yeah, I think it's exactly right. It's not always possible, I'm sure, to predict crime, but something like the whole trucking industry, we've been reading about this actually for years. The transport industry has been very vocal. We've read the opinions in the news media about the importance of the police understanding what the threats are, who's involved. It's been a recurring thing. Trucks have been attacked and burned. It's either about foreign drivers or whatever the issue might be. The fact is, it's been a hot point, a sort of kind of flashpoint in South Africa's trade and mobility environment, and a crucial one, as Genevieve says. We absolutely rely on these kind of trade routes and these relationships between places and companies who are operating those functions, and for the police not to be deeply engaged in it, especially, it's 2 years now since the unrest in 2021, to be monitoring this every hour, knowing exactly what the volume of trucks is, who else is on the road, what are they doing there. we really ought to have a much keener sense of that police presence, police, attention to the kind of background detail, following who's involved and so on. And it's a travesty that this doesn't appear to be true.
And of course, the other thing to consider is that when the police are so weak and ineffectual, what you essentially allow is very small groups of people to hold the country to ransom. As Genevieve says, this is dangerous in the country. This is an important arterial sort of route for goods traveling out of Joburg and back to Joburg and Gauteng in general. And we don't know how many people were involved in these truck burnings. For all we know, it was maybe 20 people, right? I think they said there were like 2 buckies of 10 people. That was kind of the thing. If 20 people can threaten the sort of main economic lifeline of the country because the police are so ineffectual, then you're in a very serious situation, because any lunatic, fanatic person with a political axe to grind, some kind of malevolent mafioso, whatever, can begin to make demands and seriously affect people's lives. And I think that's something that needs to be urgently dealt with. Okay.
Yeah. Just one sort of final thought there. Just looking at that, at the intro of the News 24 story, and they talk about another blow to confidence and harm in the economy. And one thinks of emergent companies who are wanting to have the opportunity now to participate. They have a stake in the economy. They've got 3 or 4 trucks. They're on the road. Their margin of loss must be very, very tight. They simply couldn't afford this. And if anyone is looking to enter the economy and to have, to build their medium-sized business into a more significant one, maybe, exploiting all the globalization, the Pan-African spirit of trade and exchange and so on, this is just going to be put a stop right on top of that. It's just going to bring it to a very abrupt close. And that's a tragedy.
Indeed it is. All right, let's move on to a story that is a little bit less menacing and a little bit more amusing. And this concerns the Nongoma local municipality in KZN. So recently, this municipality changed hands after a by-election in which the ANC managed to defeat the IFP. One of the few defeats of the IFP in by-elections in recent months. The ANC managed to grab back control of this municipality through an alliance with the National Freedom Party, which is the party that broke away from the IFP, and the EFF. And what followed was a hilarious sequence of events where the former IFP mayor refused to give back his government cars. He apparently only did so after, I think the story was reported in News 24, and there was lots of public pressure on him and threats of legal action. He then handed the cars over to the new mayor, who was from the NFP, Mayor Clifford Ndabandaba, who then proceeded to go on what was described as a joyride, driving around the municipality, going back to his home in a small village and having sort of a celebration using the cars with flashing blue light, VIP convoy. We know that you can imagine the scene. Some of this was videotaped of him arriving back at his house with people cheering, look, it's the mayor, it's the mayor. So immediately upon receiving the state cars, going on this kind of gloating, self-indulgent show-off drive through the municipality. He was confronted about this by some journalists who and then he denied that it was him. He hadn't done this. He said there's no evidence of this whatsoever. The journalist said, no, there's a video. And he said, I haven't seen the video. They said, we'll show the video to you. They sent him the video, and he apparently had blocked them or something on WhatsApp because the message didn't go through. Genevieve, this kind of seems to show, I guess, our politicians at their worst, right? We've got mayors in very poor municipality, not great really run municipality, sort of squabbling over who gets the keys to the fancy car so that they can show off. It's just, it's like a symbol for so much that's wrong. What's your take on this?
It is a grotesque display of the political conduct of the people that are supposed to be there for the people, that are supposed to represent South Africa. And to think that this is a form of celebration for the new mayor, it shows a side of the self agenda, the personal agendas that is so typical of our politicians nowadays.
We seem to have lost Genevieve there.
And I
Uh,
mean,
but sorry about that. Michael, while we get her back, what's your take on the story?
Yeah, I mean, I echo Genevieve's sentiments here. It does reveal something about the sense of priorities among some politicians at any rate. I just, a little detail in the story that I just loved. I thought a kind of choice phrase was the new mayor describing these two state vehicles with the sort of bars of blue lights on the roof as tools of trade, which undoubtedly they are, and I'm sure in rural KZN, mobility is a key thing. But you would have thought that they were very much more significant tools of trade that he would like to use as a mayor to turn the fortunes of his community around, rather than the two state vehicles with their flashing blue lights. And there is this.
And Michael, you brought to our attention recently this story of
Yes.
the councillors that are illiterate in KZN. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
I just happened to notice that one of our colleagues shared a piece, and I think to her credit, actually, it was brought to our attention by the Minister of Local Government, that in KZN there are some 300 councillors, elected councillors, who can neither read nor write. And as we were chatting before the show, the three of us, we agreed that illiteracy is not necessarily a sort of measurable quality of a good politician or somebody who is a virtuous public servant in that sense. But it is nevertheless in 2023. A vital element of being able to know what's happening in your environment and hold people to account, track reports, keep watch over officials and so on. So we do, I mean, we do have this terrible contrast between people who probably shouldn't be doing the job. It's no moral judgment of them. It's simply an advisable quality. If you want to be a councillor, you probably ought to be able to read and write. And on the other hand, this almost sort of childlike celebratory thing of wanting to race off to your home and show your family your new car with flashing lights and the mayor shame he said no, I completely deny this. There was no siren, but in the video the blue lights are sort of going, and it's this great sort of festive scene which you can kind of understand, but really when so much else needs doing and so much else is wrong, this is not necessarily a good look, as they say these days.
Yeah, indeed. Genevieve, are you back with us? Do you have any final thoughts on the story before we move on?
Yes, I'm back. I hope I don't have any more technical difficulties. I think just a final thought is that the term Blue Lights Brigade really leaves a sour taste in South Africans' mouths. And even though this is a completely hilarious, disgusting event that has happened with misuse of government property, I can't help but think about what's happened now with the VIP protection squad, where the situation there where they assaulted South African civilians, and going long even further back where government officials misuse these blue lights brigades and for their own benefit. So it does leave quite a sour taste in a South African's mouth.
Indeed. And one shudders to think, this is kind of the attitude that this is the Blue Light Brigade is a tool of the trade for a small mayor in a town that I wouldn't be surprised if you hear a story like this somewhere down the ways, like what happened with Paul Mashatile's brigade, because there's clearly a sort of view of once you've attained political power that you don't have to have too much concern for the peasants anymore. Okay, speaking of Paul Mashatile, let's talk a little bit about him. There was an editorial, I think it was in Media 24, which says that. Sorry, Michael.
No, it's Business Live actually, but it was
Business Live.
Day,
sorry, my mistake.
Yeah.
My mistake, which says that it's very clear, at least in the editor's eyes, that Paul Mashatile is making some kind of grab for power and looks set to replace Cyril Ramaphosa, or at least is going to try and replace Cyril Ramaphosa at some point in the future. Who knows? Maybe after the 2024 election, maybe even before it. But I think that's probably a bit of a stretch. He's apparently assembled a team of advisors to advise him on matters of statecraft. He's trying to raise his profile. He has talked in public about a plot to destroy him. He said this shortly after the allegations about his Blue Light Brigade convoy assaulting those people came to light. And this is this is a recurring thing in the ANC, that when you want to make a grab for power, that you declare that there is a plot against you to destroy you, and that you have no choice but to take power in order to fend off said plot. So Mashatile seems to have some allies in this. He's definitely got some people in the ANC who are not fans of Cyril Ramaphosa. But more than that, he also has help from outside the ANC, the EFF, which is kind of, as is typical for the EFF, has kind of gone back and forth on describing Mashatile as both incompetent but also a reasonable person who we can work with. Seems to be backing him as well. And one can see a situation where in 2024, the ANC needs the EFF for a coalition agreement, and Malema puts pressure on the ANC perhaps to get Mashatile in to replace Ramaphosa. It doesn't help that Ramaphosa has given a whole bunch of signs that he's not, shall we say, as enthusiastic about the job as perhaps he was when he first started. I think we remarked on the show last year that when he accepted his nomination for the ANC to be its leader again, that he kind of basically said, if I have to. It was the most depressed kind of speech heard out of a major political leader in a long time. And, he doesn't seem, there's been rumors and allegations that he's far more interested in his farm at Pala Pala. And I assume not the money in the couch, but looking after the animals and kind of running that, and then he isn't being the president. Now, I don't know if that's fair or not, but that perception is certainly out there. Michael, let me go to you again. What do you make of this? Do you think that Mashatile is making a kind of grab for power that this Business Live editorial suggests? Or, and if he does, do you think he'll be able to win? I mean, what's your take on this?
I mean, whether he'll be able to win, I'm not sure. But as you say, Ramaphosa hasn't really done his interests a lot of good by on several occasions, I think, kind of implying that he's really had enough and it's a terribly difficult job and his heart's not really in it. So that does really open the way for a keen, ambitious youngster to come along and have a go. The other point, of course, about Ramaphosa that you mentioned a bit earlier was is the fact that he's remains one of South Africa's most popular politicians. So he's a great asset. He's the asset, actually, of the ANC. And the thing that, of course, immediately occurs to me is that how ironic that at the point at which the ANC is at its weakest, we have most to worry about what it's going to be in 2024, who's going to lead it, what sort of arrangements it's going to make with other parties if it has to make them, which seems very likely. I was looking a bit earlier at a piece by Martin Williams in the Citizen in I think it was March this year, highlighting the fact that it was Mashatile who who was the behind the scenes Emanos Greece, orchestrating the ANC EFF grab of power in Gauteng and in Johannesburg and Tshwane. So as you say, the EFF has made sort of sent mixed signals about him, but clearly there is some kind of relationship there. They've had some dealings in the past. So yeah, it's potentially worrying. It might hinge on who these young advisors are that he's pulling around himself. I was interested to see in the editorial in Business Day that apparently, just as Mashatile is drawing together this kind of team to advise him as they put it on various matters of statecraft, this coincides with Ramaphosa apparently losing some of his young smart advisors. So
Right.
it does point to maybe a kind of sea change in the ANC leadership.
Yeah, as we've said many times on the show before, despite the fact that he's not nearly as popular as he used to be, Cyril Ramaphosa remains in many ways the most popular politician in the country by a long way. Everyone else has got terrible approval ratings. I think something like close to half of voters don't even know who John Steenhuisen is. Malema is well known, but is extremely polarizing with a chunk of the country fanatically in favor of him, but then a larger part of the country really, really heavily against him. And so never mind whether Mashatile is actually going to be in a position to take over or not. It would seem madness for the ANC to do so. They don't have another Cyril Ramaphosa. I mean, this to me suggests that the party, if it does elevate Mashatile, is going to set a course for electoral oblivion. Genevieve, what are your thoughts on these? Indeed.
I think just pulling back to that comment about Cyril Ramaphosa seemingly no longer interested in being president, I think that is something that South Africans are picking up on. He seems like his heart is no longer in it.
No, we lost Genevieve again.
I think that's very concerning because
I think no, she's gone. Okay, I think we're probably going to have to call it to a close soon. But Michael, do you have any final thoughts on this before we close up for today?
Just sort of one final thing was just a point that Business Day raises in the very last paragraph of its editorial, where it says that as our democracy matures, we should think about insulating the public service from political office bearers' whims. In the UK, for example, bureaucrats' tenure is not linked to politicians. And of course, what we have here is a big sort of bugbear of the IRR, the cadre deployment and the policy actually introduced, really first raised and given impetus by none other than Nelson Mandela in the 1997 was it Mafeking conference? I forget which one it was, to urge the ANC to get its hands on all levers of power. And unfortunately, the chickens have come home to roost. And this is really, the point that paragraph highlights is the importance of separating politics, the politics of leadership elections and leadership fights, and the very great task that the public service confronts in making genuine improvements in the country.
Well said. Okay, sorry about the technical difficulties, everyone, but I'm sure we'll have Genevieve back on the show again, hopefully with more stable internet. But anyway, thank you very much, everyone. We hope that you found the show interesting. We will be back with the Daily Friend wrap at 5 o'clock tomorrow, and this will be the sort of schedule going forward. We're looking at actually expanding the wrap and also placing a show on Friday, but that'll probably only start next week. So anyway, we hope that you found the show interesting, and we will see you again on the Daily Friend Show. Cheers, everyone.